The fluorescent lights of the Kings County Supreme Court flickered overhead, casting a cold glow across the marble hallway where people whispered, shuffled, and clutched their documents like fragile shields. It should have been an ordinary morning, just another crowded day in Brooklyn's busiest courthouse. But for Elena Brooks, it was the morning her entire world cracked open. She stood near the far wall, her back pressed against the cool stone as she adjusted the weight of her 5-month-old son, Noah, in her arms. Her other hand rested protectively over her 7-month pregnant belly. Every breath she took trembled. Her cheap winter coat was too thin for the bitter February air, and though the building was warm, she still shivered. Maybe from nerves, maybe from exhaustion, maybe from knowing that the man walking toward her had the power to ruin what little she had left. Damian Wolfe. He approached with the swagger of someone who believed nothing could touch him. His tailored charcoal coat, his polished shoes, the practiced smile he flashed at anyone who looked his way. It was the same look he used to impress clients and deceive colleagues. But today, it wasn't the smile that struck Elena. It was the woman strutting beside him. Camille Hart, the assistant district attorney, his mistress. The woman whose perfume Elena had smelled on Damian's shirts long before she found the evidence. Camille walked with a confidence that made Elena's stomach twist. Her red lipstick matched her power suit, and her hand lingered too comfortably on Damian's arm. Elena swallowed hard, rocking Noah gently as his small fingers clutched her coat. She wished she could disappear, melt into the walls. Be anyone but the woman standing here, waiting to be humiliated again. Damian stopped a few feet away, his voice dripping with condescension. "You look tired, Elena. I told you not to bring the baby. This is a courthouse, not a daycare." She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The humiliation burned her throat. Camille smirked. "Some people thrive on drama, shows weakness, really." Elena's cheeks flushed. She glanced around. Several people had stopped to stare. Whispers floated through the air, their looks a mix of pity and judgment. Her heart pounded in her ears. She tried to speak calmly. "Damian, we agreed today was important. I only want to explain my position to the mediator." He cut her off with a raised hand. "Your position? Elena, you can't even manage rent. Let's not pretend you're capable of handling custody." The words stabbed her. Tears pricked her eyes, but she tightened her grip on Noah, forcing herself to stay upright. She refused to break in front of him. Then Damian leaned closer, lowering his voice, but not enough to keep nearby onlookers from hearing. "You want to fight me? After everything I've covered for you? Believe me, Elena, I'll win. I always win." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "This isn't a game, Damian." "It is to me," he replied. Before she could react, a familiar pair of footsteps echoed from the stairwell above. Elena didn't notice. She was too focused on keeping her tears from spilling, too focused on holding herself together. But someone else noticed everything. A tall man paused at the top of the staircase, his robes flowing behind him, the kind of presence that made the air shift. His sharp eyes scanned the hall, landing on Elena and the man tormenting her. Judge Lucas Hale. He went still. Something in his expression changed, the kind of change that only comes when recognition slams into a person with the force of memory and grief. He whispered, barely audible, "It can't be." Then he stepped forward, eyes fixed on her, heart pounding with a truth he had buried for decades. And Elena, wiping a tear from her cheek, didn't yet realize that the man descending the stairs was the one person who could alter everything. Because he was her father. And he had just witnessed Damian's cruelty with his own eyes. Elena tightened her hold on Noah as he began to fuss, his soft cries echoing faintly in the hallway. She whispered soothingly, trying to calm him before the baby's distress drew more unwanted attention. People were already watching her like she was some tragic character in a courtroom soap opera. She hated it. She hated that Damian had made her life feel like a spectacle. But she didn't know that Judge Lucas Hale, her biological father, was approaching with long, determined strides. Elena lifted Noah to her shoulder, patting his back gently. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's right here." Her voice shook, despite her efforts. Damian scoffed loudly. "This is exactly what I mean. Look at her crying, kid, emotions everywhere, completely unstable, and I'm supposed to trust her with custody?" Camille crossed her arms, her tone sharp. Maybe you should have brought a stroller instead of dragging that poor child around like a prop. Elena stiffened. He's not a prop, he's my son. Damien rolled his eyes. Unfortunately, the cruelty of that single word hit her harder than the icy wind that had cut through her coat earlier that morning. She opened her mouth to defend herself again, but a deep, authoritative voice sliced through the noise like a blade. That's enough. The hallway fell silent. Damien turned, annoyed. Who? But his expression shifted instantly when he saw who was standing behind him. Judge Lucas Hale, one of the most respected judicial figures in the state. A man known for his unshakable composure and the unmistakable intensity in his stare. Lucas's gaze stayed fixed on Damien, cold and cutting. Mr. Wolfe, this is a courthouse, not a street corner. Control your tone. Camille straightened her blazer, smoothing her hair. Your Honor, she said with a practiced smile. We were simply preparing for mediation. Nothing inappropriate. Lucas didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone except Elena. And when his eyes met hers, something flickered: recognition, disbelief, and something deeper, something almost painful. Elena didn't understand why the judge was staring at her like that. She shifted Noah to the other shoulder, confused and embarrassed. Your Honor, I'm sorry if we were causing a disturbance. His voice softened just a fraction. You weren't the problem. Damien bristled. With all due respect, Your Honor, this is a private matter. Not when you create a scene in a public hallway, Lucas replied. Damien's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. Of course, we have the utmost respect for the court. Lucas stepped closer, too close for Damien's comfort. Do you? Because from what I witnessed, you were speaking to Mrs. Brooks in a manner that borders on harassment. Elena's breath hitched. Mrs. Brooks. Hearing her married name spoken by a judge somehow made all of this feel more real, more humiliating. Damien forced a laugh. With respect, Your Honor, my wife is emotional right now. Pregnancy hormones. You understand. Lucas's eyes narrowed in quiet warning. I understand more than you think. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. She wanted to disappear. She didn't want anyone defending her, especially not a judge who could get in trouble for intervening. Your Honor, please. It's fine. Really. Lucas turned to her, and for the first time, his stern expression cracked into something gentler. Something protective. No, he said quietly, it isn't. Her heart thudded unexpectedly. Before she could process the moment, Lucas spoke again, this time to a nearby officer. Escort Mrs. Brooks to conference room 3B. I'll handle the mediation personally. Camille's face drained of color. Your Honor, that's highly irregular. Lucas's gaze cut to her like a knife. So is what I witnessed here. And while chaos swirled around them, murmurs, objections, disbelief, Elena froze. Because the judge wasn't looking at Damien anymore. He was staring directly at her, with eyes that looked heartbreakingly familiar. And for the first time in her life, Elena felt like someone she didn't know somehow knew her. The officer guided Elena toward conference room 3B, a small, glass-walled space tucked between two court offices. Her legs trembled as she walked. Noah pressed against her shoulder, his little hands gripping her collar like he sensed her fear. She tried to steady her breathing, but everything inside her felt unhinged. Damien's cruelty, Camille's smirk, the crowd's stares, and now a judge intervening in a way she'd never seen before. When the officer opened the door for her, she stepped inside hesitantly. The room was quiet, lit by a warm lamp instead of harsh fluorescent bulbs. There was a round table, several chairs, and a small bench where she gently laid Noah, placing a soft blanket beneath him so he could nap. She brushed a hand over his hair, whispering, "Mommy's right here, okay?" But the second she stood, the weight of everything crashed down. Why had Judge Hale stepped in? Why had he defended her so fiercely? She was used to feeling invisible in this building. Just a low-rank clerk, a girl people walked past without really seeing. It didn't make sense. Her thoughts spun faster when the door opened again, and Judge Lucas Hale entered. He closed the door carefully, almost like he didn't want to startle her. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, his voice gentler than she expected. "Please sit." Elena obeyed, lowering herself into a chair. She folded her hands tightly in her lap, trying to hide how badly they shook. "Your Honor, I really hope I didn't cause any trouble out there." Lucas sat across from her. His expression softened again, just slightly, just enough to confuse her even more. "You didn't cause anything," he said. "You were enduring it." Her throat tightened. She didn't know how to respond. Lucas clasped his hands together on the table. "Elena, may I call you that?" She nodded. He seemed to study her face for a moment, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that seemed searching. As if he were looking for something he desperately needed to confirm. He inhaled slowly. "How long has this been happening?" Her eyebrows drew together. I don't understand." "The way your husband speaks to you," he clarified. "The way he treats you. It's clear this isn't new." Elena lowered her eyes, shame washing through her despite knowing she'd done nothing wrong. "A while," she whispered. "I tried to make things work. I tried to keep peace for my son. And the baby." She placed a hand over her belly. "I didn't want him growing up watching us fight." Lucas's jaw tightened. "You deserve better than what I saw." She blinked, startled by the sincerity in his tone. He leaned forward slightly. "Has Damien ever threatened you formally? Filed complaints? Manipulated your financial access? Interfered with your medical care?" Her breath hitched. "How did he know?" "Yes," she said helplessly. "He cut my insurance. He took my documents. He said he'd make sure I never got custody." Her voice cracked. "I don't have anyone to help me." For a moment, Lucas closed his eyes like her words struck something deep inside him. Then he spoke, quieter than before. "You're wrong about that." Elena frowned. "What do you mean?" Lucas stood abruptly and walked to the window, gripping the edge of the blinds as if grounding himself. His shoulders rose and fell slowly before he turned back to her. His expression changed, raw, almost pained. "Elena, there's something important you need to know. Something I should have told someone years ago. Something that may change everything about this case." Her heart thudded. "Your honor?" He stepped closer, voice trembling barely enough for her to notice. "I recognized you the moment I saw you in the hallway. Your eyes, they're the same as—" A loud knock cut him off. Damien's voice rang from the hall. "Open the door. I demand to know why my wife is in there with a judge." Elena froze. Lucas exhaled, grief and dread flickering in his gaze. Because he knew the truth Damien was about to discover would shatter the entire courthouse. The pounding on the door grew louder, each strike reverberating through the small conference room like a threat. Elena instinctively stepped closer to Noah's bench, placing a protective hand on her son's back. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Damien had always been loud, but this was different. This was a man who felt cornered. Judge Hale lifted a hand, silently telling her not to move. His calmness contrasted sharply with the chaos outside. "Your honor," Damien shouted, voice cracking with anger. "I know you're in there. Open this door right now." Lucas inhaled slowly. "Stay where you are, Elena." Her voice trembled. "What is he going to do?" Lucas gave her a steady look. "Nothing, not while I am here." For reasons she couldn't explain, that sentence made her throat tighten. No one had protected her ever. Not her adoptive parents, not Damien, not any supervisor who saw her come to work with swollen eyes and exhaustion. Hearing someone speak with such certainty felt foreign. The officer outside tried to intervene. "Sir, step back. This is a restricted meeting." But Damien wasn't listening. "She's my wife. I have a right to be present in any conversation regarding our mediation." Camille's voice joined his, sharper, colder. "This is a violation of procedure, Your Honor. We will be filing a complaint." Lucas finally stepped toward the door. Not to open it, just close the distance, like a silent warning. "Either both of you calm yourselves," he said, voice low but commanding, "or you will both be removed from this courthouse." Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Elena swallowed hard, folding her arms around herself. "He's not going to let this go," she whispered. "He always pushes until he gets what he wants." Lucas turned back to her, his expression softening in a way she didn't understand. "Elena, I was trying to tell you before we were interrupted. There is history here. More than you know." Her brows furrowed. "What history?" He hesitated. For the first time since she met him, he looked unsure, like a man carrying a truth too heavy to place in someone else's hands. "Elena," he said quietly, 26 years ago, I lost my daughter. I thought she was dead. I spent years searching. And today, in that hallway, I saw her face again." Her breath caught. "Your daughter? What does that have to do with me?" He took another step closer. "Your eyes," he whispered. Your smile. Your date of birth. Your adoption records sealed under unusual circumstances. I've suspected for months. But seeing you today, it confirmed something I cannot ignore. Elena blinked, confused. Wait, I don't. What are you saying? Lucas met her gaze with a grief that nearly buckled her knees. I believe, he said softly, painfully, that you are my daughter. The air left her lungs. Her legs nearly gave out, and she gripped the edge of the table for balance. No, that can't be, her voice broke. My adoptive parents they didn't tell me anything. Lucas's eyes shone with emotion he fought hard to hide. They may not have known the truth. Your disappearance, your adoption, none of it was handled legally. I've suspected foul play since the day you were taken, and now, looking at you. He swallowed hard. I would stake my life on what I feel. Before she could respond, the doorknob jiggled violently. Damien barked, if you don't open this door, I'm going to. Something inside, Lucas snapped. He turned sharply. Officer, remove them from this floor, now. The officer obeyed instantly. Camille protested. This is misconduct. No, Lucas replied coldly. This is me protecting someone who has suffered enough. Elena's breath trembled, her mind spinning with shock, fear, hope, disbelief all at once. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. Lucas stepped back toward her. We will speak privately, away from him, away from all of this. Elena's lips parted. Judge Hale, if what you're saying is true, then my whole life. A distant crash echoed from the hallway, followed by Damien roaring her name. And Elena realized her nightmare wasn't finished, not yet. Chaos erupted outside the conference room as the officer struggled to restrain Damien. The crash they'd heard was a metal sign knocked to the floor, followed by angry shouts echoing down the hallway. Elena felt her heart climb into her throat. Noah stirred in his sleep, sensing the tension, his tiny mouth twitching as if he might cry. Lucas moved instantly, stepping between the door and Elena like a shield. His voice carried a thunderous authority she'd never heard directed at someone on her behalf. Stay behind me, he won't get near you. Elena could barely process the moment. 5 minutes ago, she'd been an overwhelmed mother, humiliated and afraid. Now a judge, a powerful one, was telling her he believed she was his long-lost daughter. And outside, the man she once trusted with her life was screaming her name like she belonged to him. Everything felt unreal. The door rattled again. Elena, Damien roared, I know you can hear me. What lies is he telling you? The officer barked. Sir, back up. You're violating courtroom conduct. But Damien kept shouting, you think hiding behind a judge will save you? You're nothing without me. Elena flinched. Lucas caught it. He turned to her, voice controlled. Listen to me. None of what he says defines you. Not anymore. Tears stung her eyes. She didn't want to break in front of him, not when he'd already seen too much. I never wanted any of this, she whispered. I just wanted a peaceful life. For Noah. For the baby. Lucas nodded, his expression softening again. You will have that, I swear it. She stared at him, this man with the same eyes she saw in the mirror every morning, eyes she'd never been able to trace to anyone. Could it be real? Could she finally belong somewhere? Before she could speak, the officer outside finally succeeded in pulling Damien away from the door. The shouting grew distant, swallowed by the bustle of the courthouse. Camille's shrill voice lingered longer, arguing about protocol and abuse of authority, until even she was forced to retreat. For the first time in minutes, silence returned. Lucas let out a long breath, tension easing from his shoulders. You're safe for now. Elena stepped forward. Judge Hale, if what you're saying is true, if I'm really your daughter, then why was I adopted? Why didn't anyone come for me? Lucas's throat worked before he answered. Because the people who arranged your adoption didn't want me to find you. I trusted someone who betrayed me. By the time I realized you were missing, the trail was gone. Elena felt the room tilt. So I wasn't unwanted? Unwanted? Lucas repeated softly. Elena, I spent years searching. I never stopped. Her knees weakened at the sincerity in his voice. But before she could absorb the revelation, the conference room door flew open, not slammed, not broken, but pushed forcefully by a senior court officer with urgency stamped on her face. Judge Hale, the officer said, breathless, you need to come with me, now. There's an emergency with Mr. Wolf. Elena's blood ran cold. What happened? The officer hesitated, glancing between them. We had to remove him from the floor. But he's demanding a formal complaint, and he's threatening to expose information. Lucas stiffened. What information? The officer lowered her voice. He claims to have documents, something he says will end your career. Elena's eyes widened. What is he talking about? How would he have anything on you? Lucas didn't answer at first. His jaw clenched, his expression tightening with something between fear and fury. Elena, he said slowly, your adoptive records. Damien may have found something he was never meant to see. Her stomach twisted. What kind of something? Lucas looked at her with a solemn weight that chilled her. The kind that could destroy both of our lives if it's real. The officer interrupted urgently. Judge, we have to go. He's demanding an audience. Elena reached out instinctively. Wait, are you in danger? Am I? Lucas turned back, eyes burning with a promise he couldn't speak aloud. Then he stepped toward the door. And just before he disappeared, he said the words that made Elena's heart stop cold. If Damien has what I fear, everything changes. Elena stood frozen as Judge Hale left the room with the senior officer, the door clicking shut behind them. The sudden silence pressed against her like a weight. Noah shifted on the bench, whimpering softly. She moved quickly to pick him up, cradling him against her shoulder. His warmth soothed her, grounding her enough to breathe again. But her mind was storming. Documents? Something that could end a judge's career? Something tied to her adoption? None of it made sense. Elena had never seen her adoption papers. Her parents had claimed they were lost during a move. She'd believed them. She always believed what she was told. But now she wondered what else had been hidden from her. Her hands trembled as she brushed Noah's hair. Baby, what's happening to us? She whispered. He made a small sound, as if answering. Elena sank into a chair, heart thudding against her ribs. She tried to slow her breathing. It didn't work. Thoughts flashed too quickly, memories she'd buried under years of survival. A childhood of unanswered questions. Adoptive parents who never explained why they chose her. A teenage life filled with shadows instead of stories. A marriage built on control instead of care. And now a judge, someone she'd never met until today, claiming she might be his daughter? Her head spun. The doorknob rattled slightly. Elena's back straightened instantly, every nerve bracing for Damien's return. But it was only a clerk slipping a folder under the door before hurrying away. She stared at it. Her name was written across the top in thick black marker. She hesitated before picking it up. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. When she opened the folder, a wave of dizziness swept through her body. Inside were photocopies, old, grainy, some blurred at the edges, a hospital birth certificate with her infant footprint, a missing persons poster of a baby girl from over 2 decades ago, a handwritten note, sealed by order, do not release, and a faded photograph of a man holding a newborn home. A man with the same eyes she saw in her mirror each morning. Her heart stopped. It was Judge Hale. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting a sob. Oh my God, oh my God. This wasn't a fantasy. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't some delusion born from desperation. It was real. Her story, her identity, her life. Someone had hidden her from him. Someone had stolen her. Her vision blurred. She blinked rapidly, trying to stabilize herself. She needed him. She needed to ask him everything, why she'd been taken, how he'd lost her, why no one had ever come. A knock tore her out of her spiraling thoughts. Not loud, not angry, just hesitant. The door opened halfway, revealing an officer she hadn't seen before. A younger one, with kind eyes and a sympathetic tilt to his brows. Mrs. Brooks? He asked softly. She stood, Noah pressed against her chest. Yes? The officer stepped inside, lowering his voice. I was told to check on you. Judge Hale wanted to make sure you weren't alone. Her chest tightened. Is he okay? What's happening out there? The officer hesitated. Mr. Wolf is volatile. He's demanding to speak to you. He's claiming you're hiding something that affects the judge. Elena's stomach twisted. How would he know anything? I don't know, the officer replied carefully, but whatever he has, he's insisting it connects you and Judge Hale. Elena felt her knees weaken again. Everything was spinning too fast. Too many secrets. Too many lies. Too many years of unanswered questions converging into a single, terrifying moment. The officer's radio crackled. A tense voice spoke through it. Emergency on the east side. Wolf is resisting. Repeat, resisting. Get Judge Hale now. Elena gasped. Is someone hurt? The officer turned pale. No, he said. But Wolf is threatening to reveal something publicly if he's not allowed to speak. Elena clutched Noah tighter. What does he want to reveal? The officer swallowed hard. He says he knows who you really are. Elena's breath stopped. And the moment those words hit her, she knew nothing would ever be the same again. The courthouse felt different now. Charged, electric, like the air before a thunderstorm. Elena stepped into the hallway with Noah in her arms, her pulse thudding so loudly she could hardly hear the officer guiding her. People whispered as she passed, some looking curious, others concerned. She could feel eyes on her back, on her stomach, on the trembling way she held her son. But none of that compared to the dread building inside her. Damien had something dangerous, something tied to her identity and to Judge Hale. Her legs wobbled as she reached the landing overlooking the lower floor. The officer lifted a hand. Stay here, he said gently. For your safety. Elena nodded, though safety felt like a myth. She shifted Noah to her other arm, pressing her lips to his forehead. He was warm and soft, blissfully unaware of the storm exploding around him. Down on the marble floor below, chaos swirled. Damien stood, surrounded by two officers, his face flushed with fury, his coat half off one shoulder as he struggled against them. Camille hovered nearby, her expression pale and rattled, apparently realizing her affair with him had not prepared her for the full extent of his volatility. Judge Hale stood several feet away, calm but tense, his posture rigid, eyes sharp as steel. Damien spotted Elena instantly. There she is, he yelled, pointing up at her. Everyone look, she's the reason this whole courthouse is about to implode. Elena flinched. Noah startled and whimpered, her throat tightened painfully. Lucas stepped forward. Mr. Wolf, control yourself. Why should I? Damien spat. She's been lying to me for years, and you, he pointed at the judge, you've been lying to the entire state. Lucas's jaw flexed. I don't know what you think you've found, but this isn't the place. No? Damien barked. Then maybe the whole world should hear it. Before anyone could stop him, Damien yanked a folded document from his coat and held it high like a trophy. This, he shouted, proves that Judge Lucas Hale covered up an adoption scandal 26 years ago. He lied under oath, erased records, and... That's enough, Lucas snapped, stepping closer. But Damien was too far gone. He waved the papers dramatically. You want the truth? Elena isn't just some pathetic little clerk. She's your secret daughter, and you hid her to protect your career. Gasps erupted around the floor. Even Camille looked shocked. Elena's knees buckled. She gripped the railing with one hand to keep from collapsing. Her vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. Hearing the truth like that, thrown like a weapon, hurt more deeply than she expected. Lucas lifted a hand, voice booming. Mr. Wolf, you do not understand what you are saying, nor do you understand what those documents represent. Damien laughed manically. Oh, I understand everything, and once they see this, you're finished, both of you. Elena shook her head, her voice breaking. Damien, stop, please. He turned and sneered at her. Why? You think you deserve sympathy? You're a liar, Elena, pretending to be some abandoned little victim while you hid the fact you're connected to one of the most powerful judges in New York. I didn't know, she cried. Sure you didn't, he mocked. Lucas stepped between them verbally. Mr. Wolf, last warning, release the documents. Oh, I'll release them, Damien hissed. To every reporter in this city. The officers tried to restrain him again, but he jerked away, clutching the documents like a crazed prophet. And then, just as he opened his mouth to shout again, someone else burst through the lower entrance. A tall man in a dark coat, file case in his hand, breathless with urgency. The room froze as he shouted, Stop, those documents are forged. Every head whipped toward him. Elena's eyes widened, because she recognized him. Grant Miller, the quiet, kind pediatric resident who had treated Noah 2 months ago, the man whose gentle patience had calmed her baby and whose warm smile she hadn't been able to forget. He looked straight at her, then at Judge Hale, and then at Damien. Those papers, he said, voice steady, are part of an identity fraud case, and I have proof. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Elena felt her heart slam against her ribs. Because Grant wasn't supposed to be here yet, somehow, he might be the only person who could save them. For a moment, no one seemed to breathe. The echo of Grant's voice lingered in the marble chamber, pulsing through the courthouse like a warning bell no one expected. Damien froze mid-rant, his grip tightening on the papers. Even Camille stepped back, as if sensing something far larger than office gossip was unfolding. Elena blinked through her shock. Grant, of all people, standing here in the middle of a courthouse scandal? She remembered him from that stormy night in the pediatric ER, how he had held Noah's tiny wrist with such care, how his voice had softened every time she spoke. He was calm, steady, trustworthy, not someone who barged into chaos. But here he was, and he looked straight at her, as if she was the only person who mattered. Judge Hale found his voice first. "Dr. Miller," he said, measured but strained. "You understand the magnitude of what you just claimed?" Grant nodded, stepping forward. "I do, which is why I brought evidence." He opened his case, pulling out a sealed envelope stamped with a hospital insignia. "These are the original birth records from the night Elena was born. Records I accessed legally because I requested permission months ago." Lucas stiffened. "Months ago? Why?" Grant inhaled deeply. "Because a nurse who worked at the hospital back then was my aunt." A ripple of confusion swept through the crowd. Elena's heartbeat accelerated. "Your aunt?" Grant nodded once. "She passed away last year. Before she died, she told me something she was too afraid to put in writing." He looked directly at Elena. "She told me a baby girl disappeared from that hospital, stolen, replaced on paperwork, hidden." Elena's knees weakened. Her breath hitched painfully. Grant continued, voice unwavering. "When I saw you at the ER with Noah months ago, I recognized your eyes. My aunt had described them. I didn't want to assume anything, but I pulled records, compared dates, checked correspondence, and what I found confirmed everything she said." He turned to Damien. "Those documents you're waving around? They're part of an ongoing investigation into a falsified adoption ring from the 90s. And they're not just forged." He stepped closer, voice sharp. "They're illegal to possess." The officers tightened their grip on Damien immediately. Damien's face turned red. "You're lying. You're all lying. You're trying to protect her." Grant raised an eyebrow. "From what? From you? Please. You're not even a footnote in this story." Camille grabbed Damien's arm. "Damien, stop. This is serious." But he jerked away. "Serious? You think I care? If she's really his daughter, she's been lying to me for years." Elena lifted her chin despite her trembling voice. "I didn't know, Damien." "Well, you know now," he snarled, "and you still don't deserve." "Mr. Wolfe," Judge Hale's voice thundered through the hall. "If you speak to her like that again, you will be removed from this building in handcuffs." The threat hung heavy. Grant moved subtly, positioning himself closer to Elena on the staircase. She felt the warmth of his presence even across the distance. Protective, quietly protective. It made her chest ache with something unfamiliar. Judge Hale gestured toward the officers. "Take Mr. Wolfe to a secure room until we sort this out. And seize those documents." Damien fought, but this time the officers didn't hesitate. Within seconds, he was being dragged down the hall, shouting curses that grew fainter with each step. Camille backed away from the scene. Fear etched across her face. She turned and hurried off, heels clacking rapidly, as if trying to distance herself from the imploding life of the man she'd chosen. Silence settled again. Grant turned fully toward Elena now, his voice softened. "You're safe, I promise." Her throat tightened. "Why? Why would you help me like this?" He swallowed, choosing his words. "Because I couldn't watch someone as strong as you keep suffering alone." Another heartbeat. "And because the truth matters." Judge Hale moved closer, eyes glimmering with emotion. "Elena, if you're ready, we can face this together." The world spun as everything shifted around her: identity, safety, family, future. And then another officer rushed in, breathless. "Judge Hale, there's been a development." Lucas stiffened. "What now?" The officer looked at Elena. "At the precinct, Mr. Wolfe is demanding to talk. He says he has one more secret about Elena, and he won't speak to anyone except her." Elena's blood turned to ice. And the moment she heard it, she knew whatever Damien wanted to reveal would change everything. Elena felt her stomach twist as the officer's words echoed through the hallway. Damien wanted to speak to her, only her, and he claimed to have one more secret, one more weapon, One more attempt to break her. She hugged Noah closer, feeling his tiny heartbeat against her collarbone. She didn't know how much more she could take, her identity in ruins, her past rewritten, her marriage shattered, her future uncertain. And now Damien wanted another confrontation. Judge Hale stepped forward immediately. She's not going anywhere near him alone. Grant agreed at once. Absolutely not. But the officer shook his head. He refuses to speak to anyone else, says it's about her safety. Elena scoffed weakly. Damien has never cared about my safety. The officer hesitated. He said, it's about the baby. Silence slammed through the air. Grant's expression darkened. What does that mean? Elena felt the ground shift beneath her. The baby? What about the baby? Judge Hale placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You don't have to do this right now. You're overwhelmed. We can question him without you. But Elena straightened, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. No, I need answers. Her grip tightened around Noah. Whatever he knows, I can't keep running from it. Lucas studied her for a long moment before nodding. Then I go with you. Grant stepped forward. So do I. She blinked. Grant, you don't have to. I want to, he said simply. His tone was calm, but his eyes held something fierce. Protective. Determined. The kind of support she had never received from anyone in her life. The officer guided them toward a secure interview room on the lower level. Elena's steps were shaky, but she kept going, her breath shallow, her pulse racing. Grant walked beside her, close enough that she felt steadier, while Judge Hale stayed just behind her, his presence a silent promise. When they reached the room, Damien was seated at the metal table, hands cuffed, breath ragged. His hair was disheveled, his eyes wild, not with anger this time, but fear. Real fear. It startled her. The moment he saw Elena, his shoulders slumped. I told them I'd only talk to you. Elena didn't sit. She held Noah tightly and stared at him with a calmness she didn't feel. What do you want, Damien? He swallowed hard. Before I say anything, you need to know, I didn't plan any of this. I didn't know who you were. I didn't know what you were tied to. Her voice was steady. You lied to me every day. You controlled me. Don't pretend you were trying to protect me. I wasn't, he admitted. Not at first. Lucas tensed. Grant glared. Damien continued. But things changed when I found your medical file. Elena's breath hitched. What medical file? Damien's voice dropped. The one you never saw. From your pregnancy tests. Elena froze. What are you talking about? Damien looked away, guilt clouding his features. Elena, you didn't lose a twin because of nature. The doctor said the stress you were under made your body shut down. But that's not all. Elena felt the room spin. Stop. No, you need to hear this. Damien took a shaky breath. The doctor? He ran a DNA test when you were in the ER. On the fetus. Grant frowned sharply. Why would he do that without consent? Damien's voice cracked. Because I asked him to. I thought you were cheating. I thought the baby wasn't mine. Elena gasped in horror. You what? Tears welled in her eyes. Damien nodded, miserable. I was wrong. About everything. Grant stepped forward. What did the test show? Damien looked directly at Elena. Elena, the baby you're carrying doesn't match my DNA. The room stopped. Grant's eyes widened. Lucas paled. Elena shook her head violently. That's impossible, she whispered. There's no one else. There has never been anyone else. Damien lowered his head. I know. That's why the doctor thought the test was wrong. He swallowed hard. So he ran it again, and again. Silence. Then Damien said the words that shattered the air. He said the baby isn't mine, and it isn't yours either. Elena's heart stopped. Her knees buckled. Grant caught her just before she collapsed. And in the suffocating stillness, it became clear whatever was inside her wasn't what she believed it to be. The room felt like it had no walls, just an echoing void swallowing every breath Elena tried to take. She stared at Damien, her pulse roaring in her ears, her arms locked protectively around Noah as if holding him would stop the world from collapsing. What do you mean? She whispered. The baby isn't mine. Damien clenched his fists against the cuffs. I didn't believe it either. But the doctor, he said, the DNA is different. Completely different. Grant stepped forward, voice sharp. That makes no medical sense. She is carrying that child. Biologically, that's impossible. Damien shook his head miserably. Not if something happened before she got to the hospital. Lucas stiffened. What are you implying? Choose your next words very carefully. Damien swallowed hard. I'm saying, when Elena was unconscious during that emergency intake months ago, someone accessed her chart. Someone switched embryos. Elena blinked as if the world tilted beneath her. No, she whispered. No, that can't be real. I would have known. I would have felt. But she stopped because she remembered. That night, that horrible night when she collapsed from exhaustion and stress, and Damien hadn't answered his phone. When she'd woken up alone in a dim hospital room, confused and frightened, the doctor brushed off her questions. He said she just needed rest. She had believed him. Her knees buckled, and Grant caught her before she fell. His hand on her back steadied her trembling body, but her mind was falling through memories, fears, unanswered questions. Lucas stepped closer, voice low and strained. Elena, think carefully. Did anything unusual happen during your early pregnancy? Tears hit her cheeks. I don't know. I was so tired, so stressed. The doctor said my hormones were unstable. I trusted him. Damien closed his eyes. He lied, and I think Camille helped him. Elena stiffened. Camille? Damien nodded weakly. She hated you. She said you trapped me. She said you didn't deserve a child. She said, he winced at Lucas's murderous glare. She said she knew someone who could fix the situation. I didn't think she meant something like this. Grant swore under his breath. If this is true, this isn't just fraud, it's a criminal act, a federal one. The officer in the corner nodded grimly. We'll need to contact the DA's office and secure the hospital records. Elena shook her head violently, tears streaming. No, 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 this can't be happening. I carried this child. I felt every kick, every heartbeat. How can this be real? Grant held her face gently, grounding her. Elena, listen to me. Whatever the truth is, you didn't do anything wrong. You were violated. You were used. And we will uncover every single person involved. His voice trembled with a fierce promise. Lucas's eyes were glossy with pain. Elena, if what Damien says is true, then someone stole a child and forced you to carry it. Elena sobbed, a sound so raw it tore through the room. And if they did, Lucas continued, his voice breaking despite his effort to stay composed, we're going to find that child's mother, and we're going to make every person responsible pay. Damien looked down, guilt heavy on his shoulders. I never meant for any of this. I didn't know who you were. If I had known, you would have exploited her sooner, Grant snapped. The officer's radio crackled suddenly. Unit 3, respond immediately. Ada Camille Hart has been detained at the hospital. She attempted to access sealed medical files. Elena's spine chilled. The officer looked at them gravely. And she's asking for Elena by name. Grant tightened his grip on her arm. Don't. You don't owe that woman anything. But Elena's eyes drifted toward the doorway. What did she do to me? She whispered. Lucas exhaled shakily. We'll get answers together. Before anyone could say another word, another voice crackled through the radio, panicked, urgent. Emergency. Camille Hart collapsed during questioning. She keeps repeating one sentence over and over. The radio hissed with static. Then the words came through. Tell Elena. The baby wasn't meant for her. Elena felt as if her bones had turned to ice. The words echoing from the radio replayed in her head like a nightmare she couldn't shake. Tell Elena. The baby wasn't meant for her. Her grip tightened around Noah until he whimpered. Grant gently steadied her, guiding her to sit before she collapsed. Judge Hale crouched in front of her, his voice gentle but trembling with barely controlled fury. Elena, look at me, he said softly. You are safe. We will not let anything happen to you. But she didn't feel safe. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, the ground behind her crumbling, the drop below dark and endless. Why would she say that? Elena whispered. What does that mean? Who was it meant for? The officer in the room exchanged a grim look with Judge Hale. We don't know yet. But Camille's collapse seems strange. Almost like she was under extreme panic. Damien let out a shaky breath. She's terrified. That's why she's talking. Grant's eyes narrowed. Terrified of what? Damien hesitated. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time since Elena had met him, he looked genuinely afraid. "There's someone else involved," he muttered. "Someone above Camille. Someone who funded the whole thing." Elena's heart stuttered. Someone above her? Damien nodded, avoiding their eyes. Camille wasn't smart enough to organize something like this. She didn't have the connections. She didn't have the resources. Then who did? Judge Hale pressed. Damien swallowed hard. Someone who had access to Elena's records. Someone who wanted to control her life long before I ever married her. A chill crept up Elena's spine. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. Damien finally looked at her, broken, ashamed, terrified. "Your adoptive parents? They weren't chosen by chance. Someone placed you with them. Someone who made sure you never knew the truth." Elena shook her head violently. "They didn't even want me. They never acted like they did." Grant stepped closer, voice gentle. "Elena, sometimes people take children not out of love, but out of obligation, or fear, or orders." Orders. The word hit her like a blow. Judge Hale's eyes darkened, a storm gathering behind them. "Damien, say the name." Damien shook his head. "If I say it, my life is over." Lucas slammed a hand on the table, the sound echoing through the metal room. "Your life as you knew it is already over. Say the name." Damien winced. Sweat collected at his temples. His lips parted, but no words came out, not at first. It took several long seconds before he finally whispered, "The man who arranged everything is the same man who sealed her adoption records." Elena's pulse roared. "Who?" Judge Hale demanded. Damien looked up, defeated. "Judge Warren Keaton?" The room froze. Grant's jaw clenched. "That's impossible. Keaton oversees the family court system. He controls half the adoption approvals in the state." Damien nodded weakly. "Exactly." Elena's legs trembled uncontrollably. "Why? Why would he do this? Why me?" Damien shut his eyes. "Because he owed someone. Someone powerful. And because your disappearance wasn't an accident." A silent scream built in Elena's chest. Her entire life, every unanswered question, every ache, every feeling of not belonging converged at once. Judge Hale stood abruptly, his face pale with fury. "Keaton was the one who told me the case was closed. He said the trail went cold. He told me my daughter was dead." Elena sucked in a breath. Grant steadied her hand. "Elena, we're going to expose him. Every last one of them." Before anyone could speak further, the door burst open. The officer who'd left earlier rushed in, breathless and shaken. "Judge Hale, you all need to come quickly." Lucas stiffened. "What happened?" The officer swallowed. "It's Camille. She woke up long enough to identify the person behind everything." Elena's heart stalled. "Who is it?" The officer hesitated, eyes full of dread. "She said the baby was never meant for you, because the real mother is—" He stopped, voice cracking. "Someone you know." The hallway outside the interrogation room felt colder than before, so cold Elena wondered if it was just the air conditioning or the truth sinking deeper into her bones. Noah whimpered softly against her chest as she followed Judge Hale, Grant, and the two officers down the corridor. Her steps felt shaky, disconnected, like she was walking through someone else's nightmare. "The real mother is someone you know." The words echoed relentlessly. Elena swallowed, trying to calm her racing heart. "Who could it be?" I don't really know many people." Grant walked beside her, close but careful, watching her as though she might collapse. "You don't have to hear anything today," he said gently. "We can protect you from this." Elena shook her head. "No, I need to know. I need to understand why my life was taken apart." Judge Hale slowed to walk on her other side. His voice carried a fatherly steadiness she'd never known growing up. "Whatever this is, you won't face it alone." She looked at him, and for a moment, she saw a flash of what could have been birthday candles, school events, someone cheering for her at graduation. A lifetime of memories replaced by silence. Her throat tightened. They reached the medical holding room, a small space where Camille Hart lay on a reclined gurney, pale and trembling. Electrodes monitored her heart, and a nurse stood nearby, arms crossed tensely. Camille looked up the second the group entered. Her eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were now wide and haunted. Fear clung to her like a second skin. When her gaze found Elena, her breath hitched. "Elena," she whispered. Grant stepped forward. "Don't speak, unless you're strong enough. But Camille ignored him. She lifted a shaking hand toward Elena, but dropped it halfway, too weak to keep it raised. I didn't want, she coughed, voice cracking. I didn't want it to go this far. Damien, who had been brought in under guard and restrained to a chair across the room, glared at her. You did this. You dragged me into it. Camille ignored him. Judge Hale approached her bedside, his voice controlled but icy. We were told you identified the person behind this operation. Camille closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. Yes. Who is it? Elena asked, her voice so soft it barely sounded like her own. Camille's gaze drifted up to her, full of guilt, regret, and something that looked strangely like pity. You won't believe me, but you need to. Elena braced herself. Camille inhaled shakily. The baby you're carrying was never meant for you. It was meant for another woman, a woman who couldn't carry a child. Grant frowned. Who? Who would go to such extremes? Camille's throat bobbed. She's powerful, the ADA whispered. And she's been looking for you for months. Watching you. Elena stepped back instinctively. Grant moved closer. Just say the name. Camille's lips trembled. Judge Audrey Keaton. Silence detonated through the room. Judge Hale's head snapped back as though struck. Audrey, Warren Keaton's wife? Camille nodded weakly. She was dying to have a child. She would have done anything, even replace your pregnancy. Elena staggered. Grant caught her arm instantly. Easy. But Elena couldn't breathe. Judge Keaton, one of the most intimidating, well-known, respected judges in New York, the one who signed off major custody rulings. The one Elena had seen on the news just weeks ago advocating for ethical reform in family courts. Elena shook her head. That makes no sense. She's barely spoken to me. Camille swallowed. Because she didn't want you to know. She and her husband, they orchestrated everything. Your adoption. Your sealed records. And when they realized who you were becoming, they panicked. Elena felt her chest cave in. No, she whispered. No. Why? Why me? Camille's voice cracked. Because you're not just anyone. You're the one baby they were supposed to control. And when you got pregnant on your own, you became a threat. Grant clenched his fists. This is insane. Camille's breathing grew shallow. There's one more thing. The most important thing. Her eyelids fluttered, her voice barely audible. Elena, Judge Keaton isn't just tied to your past. A pause. A heaving breath. She's tied to your future. She wants something from you. Her voice trailed off to a faint rasp. Before Elena could ask what, Camille's monitor began beeping frantically. Nurses rushed in, and Camille's final breath escaped her lips, leaving Elena with a truth she couldn't outrun and a judge who apparently wanted her child. The medical team rushed around Camille's bed, but Elena barely registered the frantic motion. The room swayed beneath her feet, and for a moment she thought she might faint. Grant caught her shoulders, steadying her before she fell to the floor. Elena, breathe, he murmured softly. But she couldn't. Her heartbeat felt like it was punching her lungs. She clutched Noah closer, her fingers trembling so badly she feared she might drop him. Judge Hale stood rigid, his expression carved from stone outrage, grief, and a dawning horror tightening every muscle in his face. When the nurse finally pronounced Camille gone, a heavy silence swallowed the room. Damien cursed under his breath. So that's it? She dies and leaves us with nothing but riddles? Grant shot him a venomous glare, but Elena barely heard them. Her mind raced with Camille's final words. Judge Keaton isn't just tied to your past, she's tied to your future. What did that even mean? What could that woman, the same judge whose rulings Elena had filed hundreds of times, possibly want with her? Judge Hale approached slowly, his voice deep and steady. Elena, we need to get you somewhere safe. Now. She shook her head. No. No more hiding. I want the truth. Grant stepped closer, hands gentle but firm. Elena, she just died. You've been through too much today. Let us take care of the rest. But Elena raised her chin, surprising even herself with the strength in her voice. If Keaton was part of my adoption, if she tampered with my pregnancy, if she wanted this baby, I won't run from that. Damien let out a bitter laugh. You think you can go up against her? She controls half the judges in this state. She's untouchable. Judge Hale turned so sharply, Damien flinched. Not anymore. The force in his voice made the room still. Hale continued, quieter now but no less fierce. If she orchestrated an illegal adoption, if she interfered with Elena's medical care, if she stole a pregnancy, she will fall. And she will fall hard. Elena saw something shift in him then. Not just a judge, not just a protector, a father. He looked at her in a way no one ever had, like she mattered, like he had been waiting for her entire life. Elena, he said gently, you are not alone in this. Her eyes filled. I don't even know how to feel right now. Grant brushed her shoulder with a tenderness that melted something in her chest. Feel whatever you need to feel. We're right here. Before she could respond, the door opened again. A senior detective from the NYPD Special Investigations Unit stepped in, his expression grim. We have a situation, he announced. Everyone tensed. The detective turned to the officers. We just received word that Judge Audrey Keaton has gone missing. Her security detail can't locate her. Her phone is off. Her car is gone. Elena felt her blood freeze. Damien's eyes widened. Missing? She's running. That means she did something. Judge Hale exhaled sharply. She knows the investigation is coming. The detective nodded. That's not the only issue. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Before she disappeared, Judge Keaton left a message at the DA's office. Grant stiffened. What message? The detective's jaw tightened. She claimed she has legal custody over something critical. Elena's pulse spiked. What does that mean? The detective looked straight at her. She says she has full legal rights to the fetus you're carrying, and she intends to claim it. Elena felt the world tilt violently. No, she whispered. That's impossible. That's insane. She can't. She can try, the detective said. And she's already filed an emergency petition. Elena shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. She wants to take my baby? A baby that isn't even biologically mine? Grant stepped in front of her protectively. Over my dead body. Judge Hale's fury was volcanic, restrained only by his oath. She thinks she can outrun the law. She's wrong. The detective looked at all of them, his expression grave. And that's not the worst part. Elena's stomach dropped. There's more? The detective nodded. Before she vanished, Judge Keaton accessed a sealed vault at the courthouse archive. He paused. And she took a file with your name on it, Elena. Elena's heart stopped. A file that was never meant to exist. Elena felt the words hit her like a physical blow. A file that was never meant to exist. Her mouth went dry. Her fingers tightened around Noah until Grant gently touched her hand, grounding her. Judge Hale stepped toward the detective, his voice controlled but trembling with barely contained rage. What file? What was in it? We don't know yet, the detective replied. The vault's security cameras were tampered with. Keaton knew exactly what she was doing. Damien, still cuffed to the chair, let out a humorless laugh. Of course she did. She's been pulling strings since the day Elena was born. Elena turned toward him slowly. Tell me everything. Now. No more secrets. No more half-truths. Damien swallowed, suddenly looking older, defeated. I didn't know everything. But Camille, she talked. And when she panicked, she talked even more. Grant crossed his arms. Then talk now. Damien exhaled shakily. Keaton wasn't just involved in your adoption. She engineered it, she controlled it, and she monitored you for years. Elena's pulse stopped. Monitored me? Why? Damien lowered his gaze. Because she believed you were the key to something she wanted, something she couldn't get. Grant frowned. A child. Yes, Damien admitted, but not just any child. She believed you carried a genetic link that mattered to her. Judge Hale snapped. Stop dancing around the truth. What link? Damien hesitated. She wanted a baby connected to your bloodline. Lucas went still. My bloodline? He repeated slowly. Damien nodded. She believed your family's medical traits, some rare immunity markers, would give the child a better chance of surviving her condition. Lucas staggered back a step, horror creeping across his face. Her immune disorder, she's been sick for years. The detective confirmed it. We got word months ago that Judge Keaton quietly applied for emergency medical fertility exemptions. Grant's eyes widened. So she used Elena. Forced a swap. Elena felt sick to her core. She used my body like an incubator. A wave of nausea rolled through her. Grant steadied her again, his warm hands firm on her arms. Judge Hale's face was carved from fury. "I'll destroy her for this." But the detective's expression said things were even worse. "There's more," he said quietly. "The stolen file Keaton accessed it 30 minutes before she disappeared. And we have a partial record from the vault inventory." Elena braced herself. The detective continued. "The file contained DNA results, sealed testimony, and a signed statement from a doctor from 26 years ago." Lucas stiffened. "A statement about what?" The detective looked Elena directly in the eyes, sympathy filling his own. "It contained the truth about how you were taken." Elena's breath stilled. "Tell me." He hesitated before saying it. "You weren't kidnapped by chance. You weren't misplaced in the system. Keaton orchestrated your disappearance from the hospital to leverage your father." Judge Hale's face twisted in anguish. "She took my daughter to control me?" The detective nodded. "She wanted influence. You were going to expose her husband's illegal adoption brokerage. So they took Elena." The room spun violently. Elena felt her knees buckling, but Grant caught her again. "How many times?" she whispered. "How many people were part of tearing my life apart?" Grant looked at her with heartbreaking tenderness. "Too many, but none of them are going to win now." "No," Lucas growled. "They won't." The detective took a step closer, urgency tightening his voice. "There's one final piece of information. One more thing Camille said before she died." Everyone held their breath. "She said Keaton isn't just trying to take the unborn baby." Elena felt cold rush through her veins. The detective paused. "Keaton believes Elena holds the key to another child, one that was hidden years ago." Silence slammed through the room. "Another child?" Grant whispered. "Elena, do you know anything about that?" Her voice broke. "No, I don't." The detective looked at them all, grave and shaken. "According to Camille, somewhere out there, a sibling exists." Elena froze. "A sibling?" she whispered. The detective nodded. "And Keaton knows where they are." Before anyone could react, an officer rushed in, panic twisting his face. "Judge Hale, urgent. Keaton just sent a message." Lucas stiffened. "What message?" The officer swallowed hard. "She wants to meet Elena alone. Tonight." Elena's heart slammed painfully. "She says if Elena refuses, she'll make sure the real sibling disappears forever." Elena felt the room tilt, as if gravity itself had shifted. "Meet Keaton alone? Tonight?" Her palms turned cold. She clutched Noah tighter, his soft breaths the only steady thing in a world that kept breaking open beneath her feet. Grant stepped forward immediately. "Absolutely not. She's manipulating you." "This is classic coercion." Judge Hale's voice dropped into a low, dangerous register Elena had never heard from him. "She thinks she can use threats against my daughter? She is out of her mind." But the detective shook his head. "Keaton doesn't bluff. If she says she'll make the sibling disappear, she has the means." The word sibling struck Elena again harder this time. A brother? A sister? Someone out there who shared her blood, her history, her stolen past? Her voice trembled. "Why does she want me alone?" Damien, still cuffed but oddly quieter, spoke in a low, tense voice. "Because she knows you're the only one who'll hesitate. Hale will act. Grant will intervene. But you still care. That's why she chose you." Elena turned toward him, startled by the unexpected gentleness in his tone. Damien looked exhausted, defeated, like a man realizing he had never been the biggest monster in her life. Grant shot him a look. "Don't pretend you suddenly care." But Damien didn't rise to the challenge. He stared at Elena. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I know that. But I don't want anything to happen to you or the baby." Elena blinked, unsure how to respond to a man she used to love, then feared, then pitied. Judge Hale moved closer to her, his voice calmer now but firm. "Elena, listen to me. Meeting Keaton alone is not an option. She's desperate. Desperate people make reckless choices." Elena's throat tightened. "But what if she has my sibling? What if she really can hurt them?" The detective sighed heavily. "She doesn't need to hurt anyone to make them disappear. All she needs is a sealed court order and one complicit institution." Elena felt a tremor run through her. "Then I can't ignore her." Grant gently turned her toward him, his eyes filled with concern and something deeper, something unspoken but undeniably strong. "We're not letting you go into a trap. Not again." His hands were warm on her arms, grounding her, convincing her she wasn't as alone as she felt. Judge Hale nodded. If she wants you alone, we'll give her the illusion of that, but we'll follow. We'll have surveillance, backup, everything. The detective agreed. We can set up a controlled meet, but only if Elena understands the risk. Elena swallowed hard. I understand. I need answers. I need the truth before it destroys someone else. Grant's gaze softened. You're braver than you realize. She felt tears well up. I'm terrified. That's what makes you brave, he whispered. Before she could respond, another officer hurried into the room, holding a tablet. We traced the message Keaton sent. It was routed through a private network, encrypted, hard to follow, but we got a location ping before it vanished. Judge Hale stiffened. Where? The officer turned the tablet toward them. Elena felt her stomach drop at the address. The River Cafe, Brooklyn Bridge Park. The elegant waterfront restaurant. The one she'd passed dozens of times while walking Noah along the pier. The one with soft lights reflecting on the East River like broken stars. Grant frowned deeply. Why choose a public place? Does she want witnesses? The detective shook his head. No, she wants noise, confusion, a crowd to disappear into. Elena shivered. Tonight. What time? The officer replied. 8:30 p.m. She told Elena to come alone. Judge Hale looked at his daughter, his voice steady and strong. You are not going alone, do you hear me? Elena nodded, but deep inside, fear churned. Because Keaton didn't just want a meeting. She wanted control. She wanted leverage. She wanted something bigger than custody, bigger than secrets. And Elena could feel it, the truth waiting at that waterfront. A truth that could tear apart everything she had left. And as the clock ticked toward nightfall, Elena realized Keaton wasn't the only one watching her. Someone else had been waiting too. The winter sky had already darkened by the time Elena stepped out of the precinct. The February wind bit through her coat, carrying with it the sharp scent of the East River. Grant walked beside her, close enough that she felt shielded from the gusts. Judge Hale followed, speaking quietly with the detective as they coordinated the controlled meet. But Elena's focus was locked on the distant lights of Brooklyn Bridge Park, glowing faintly through the haze like an omen. 8:30 p.m. Only 2 hours away. Her stomach twisted. She was going to confront Judge Audrey Keaton, a woman with the power to bury secrets, lives, and entire families. A woman who believed she owned Elena's unborn child. A woman who had stolen her past and was now threatening her future. Grant noticed her trembling. Elena, you don't have to be strong right now. Not for us. She exhaled shakily. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm walking into a fire. You are, Grant admitted. But you're not walking alone. She looked up at him, surprised by the quiet intensity in his eyes. Why are you doing all this for me? He hesitated only a beat before saying, because you deserve someone who shows up for you, and because I care. Her breath caught. She hadn't expected that. Not today, not ever. Judge Hale approached them, his expression a mixture of determination and guilt. Elena, he began softly, I need you to know something before tonight. She turned to him, bracing herself. I wasn't a perfect man back then, he said. I trusted the wrong people. I believed lies, and I never stopped searching for you. But I wasn't fast enough. His voice cracked. If I had fought harder, you would have grown up safe. Loved, protected. Not in a home that hurt you, not in a marriage that trapped you, not in this nightmare. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. She shook her head. You didn't know. None of this is your fault. But he disagreed. She could see it in the way his shoulders sagged, the grief etched into every line on his face. Noah stirred gently in her arms, reminding her of the life she still had to protect. Grant leaned close. We need to get you somewhere warm until the meeting. The River Cafe is outdoors along the water. You shouldn't be out in the cold for too long. Judge Hale nodded. We booked a private room at a hotel nearby. Surveillance teams will be in place. Undercovers will blend into the park. You'll have an exit route, multiple officers watching, and me and Grant in proximity. Elena swallowed. She wants me alone. Alone is a word, Grant said quietly, not a reality. They reached the hotel lobby, warm, softly lit, the kind of place she had never stepped foot in before. While the detective briefed the security team, Grant helped settle Noah into a portable bassinet the hotel staff provided. Elena watched her baby sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. "What if she tries to take him too?" she whispered. Grant placed a steady hand over hers. "She won't touch him, not while I'm alive." Elena looked up sharply, heart squeezing. He meant it. She could feel the truth in his voice. Judge Hale joined them again. "There's something else," he said. Elena tensed. "What now?" She sent a second message. His jaw tightened. "It came to my private line." Grant's expression darkened. "What did she say?" Judge Hale hesitated, a rare, unsettling sight. She said, "If Elena brings anyone with her, she'll release the sibling's address to someone else." Someone she called the buyer. Elena nearly collapsed. Grant caught her instantly. "A buyer?" she whispered, horrified. "She's selling my sibling?" "No," Judge Hale said. "She's using that as leverage, but we can't assume it's a bluff." Fear tore through Elena's chest. "What do I do?" she pleaded. Judge Hale squeezed her shoulders. "We're going to outsmart her. Tonight, you will appear alone, but you won't be. We'll protect you. And we'll end this." Before Elena could respond, another officer rushed toward them. "Judge Hale, we just picked up a third message." Judge Hale swallowed. "From Keaton?" The officer shook his head. "No. From someone claiming to be the sibling." Elena froze. And the message said only one sentence. "Don't trust Keaton. Trust me. I know where she's taking you tonight." Elena stared at the officer, her breath catching painfully in her chest. A message from the sibling? Her mind reeled. She hadn't even processed the possibility of another child stolen from Judge Hale, someone who shared her blood, her face, her history. And now that person was reaching out to her directly? Judge Hale stepped forward, voice tight. "Let me see the message." The officer handed him a phone. A single text glowed across the screen. "Don't trust Keaton. Trust me. I know where she's taking you tonight." There was no name, no number, just the message. Grant frowned. That could be a trap. Damien, still cuffed but watching intently, shook his head. Keaton would never risk pretending to be the sibling. She's too proud. Too arrogant. Judge Hale rubbed his forehead. But how did the sender know about the meeting? Only 4 people knew. Elena stiffened. Unless someone's listening. Grant immediately scanned the room, eyes sharp. Could someone have hacked the precinct's system? The detective nodded grimly. It's possible, if Keaton has someone on the inside. Elena's heart thudded painfully. So this message could be real, or it could lead me straight into Keaton's hands. Judge Hale placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You won't respond. Not until we trace the number." The officer shook his head slowly. "Sir, it's encrypted. Bounced through several relays. We'll need hours we don't have." Grant turned to Elena. Did anything about the message feel familiar? Any phrase? Any instinct about it? Elena shook her head helplessly. "How would I know? I didn't even know I had a sibling until an hour ago." Grant softened. "Right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't pressure you." But Judge Hale wasn't letting it go. He paced a few steps, his jaw clenched. If the sibling is real, and if Keaton took 2 children, not 1, then they might be the only person who knows the full truth. Elena trembled. What if they're in danger too? Grant took her hand, warm, steady, grounding. "Then we protect them. Just like we'll protect you." The detective raised his voice slightly. "We're running out of time." Keaton set the meet for 8:30 p.m. If she realizes Elena isn't coming alone, she might disappear for good. Elena closed her eyes, battling waves of fear. She wanted to run. She wanted to hide. She wanted to throw up. Instead, she stood straighter. "I'm going," she said quietly. Grant and Judge Hale spoke at the same time. "No." She looked between them, tears burning behind her eyes. "If Keaton has my sibling, if she's using them as leverage, I can't live with myself if I don't try." Judge Hale's voice shook. "Elena, you're my daughter. I just found you. I can't lose you again." Her heart clenched painfully. "You won't." Grant stepped closer. "You're pregnant. You have Noah. Your safety matters more." "It's not just about me," Elena whispered. "It's about every child she's taken. Every lie she's written into someone's life. If she goes free, she'll destroy someone else's future too." The room fell unbearably quiet. Judge Hale finally nodded, but his eyes glistened. "Then we go with the plan. You'll walk into the park alone, but we'll be surrounding you. Grant will be closest. Elena met Grant's steady gaze. Will you stay with me? He nodded without hesitation. Every second. The detective outlined the logistics officers disguised as joggers, tourists, restaurant staff, undercover agents along the waterfront, helicopter surveillance nearby, backup staged across the promenade. It was a small army for one meeting. And still, Elena felt the cold twist of dread inside her. As they prepared to leave the hotel room, the officer's phone buzzed again. Another text. The detective grabbed it, eyes narrowing. It's from the same encrypted sender, he said. Elena's stomach dropped. What does it say? The detective read it aloud. Keaton isn't your biggest threat tonight. Someone with you is lying. The room went still. Grant's eyes sharpened. Judge Hale tensed. Damien froze in disbelief. Elena felt her heart crack open. Someone with her. Lying? The detective looked around at the tense, silent group, and Elena realized she had no idea who she could trust anymore. The room froze under the weight of the message. Someone with Elena. Lying. Her pulse thudded painfully, Noah shifting in her arms as if sensing the tension crackling through the air. Grant's brows furrowed immediately. This is manipulation. Keaton wants to destabilize us. Judge Hale shook his head slowly. Or someone close to us really is compromised. The detective scanned their faces. We need to take this seriously. Damien leaned forward in his restraints, eyes darting. She's playing you all. You think she doesn't know how to sow doubt? She's a judge. She's been manipulating people for decades. Grant snapped. You're one to talk about manipulation. But Elena spoke before the argument escalated. Stop, all of you. Her voice was steady, far steadier than she expected. She looked between them. Grant, whose presence had steadied her countless times today. Judge Hale, the father she had only just learned she had. The detective team, fighting to protect her. Even Damien, broken, angry, guilty, but strangely honest now that the truth was bigger than him. Elena swallowed. If Keaton is trying to divide us, it's because she's scared. That means we're close. The detective nodded. Agreed, but we still need to proceed carefully. If there is a leak, it would compromise the entire operation tonight. Grant clenched his jaw. Then we stay together. And no one gets close to Elena without clearance. But Judge Hale lifted a hand. We have to consider all possibilities. Grant stiffened. Meaning what? Hale's gaze swept the room with heavy seriousness. This message came from someone who claims to be Elena's sibling. That person might know things we don't, including something about the people around her. The detective added, we should run background checks on everyone involved in this operation. Immediately, Damien let out a harsh laugh. Start with Grant. He walked in out of nowhere with a miracle explanation. Grant turned to him sharply. I saved your son's life, you ungrateful. Elena's son, Damien corrected bitterly. Grant stepped closer, eyes blazing. And I will protect him with my life. Enough, Judge Hale thundered. His voice filled the room with a force that silenced every argument. No one in this room is the enemy, but someone close to us might be. That means we proceed smart, not divided. Elena exhaled shakily. I trust all of you, she said quietly, but I also know trust is how I got hurt before. Grant softened instantly. Elena? But she shook her head, not unkindly. Grant, I believe you, I do, but believing isn't the same as knowing. The detective's radio buzzed suddenly. Update on Keaton, an officer reported. Traffic cameras caught her vehicle heading south along the river. She's not going to the river cafe yet. She's circling. Judge Hale's expression hardened. She's checking for surveillance. Grant muttered. She's preparing an escape route. Elena felt her chest tighten. So the meeting might not be the only place she plans to take me. The detective's voice was grave. We need to assume she has a secondary location. Damien shifted tensely in his chair. She always has a backup plan. Grant turned sharply. How do you know? Damien hesitated. Because Camille once said it. When you deal with people like the Keatons, they always have another card to play. Judge Hale rubbed his forehead. We're missing something. Something big. Elena gazed down at Noah, sleeping peacefully, blissfully unaware. Her tears fell silently onto his tiny blanket. Grant placed a gentle hand on her back. We'll get through this. Her voice cracked. I just want my family safe, the one I have and the one I lost. Suddenly, another officer hurried into the room, phone in hand, face pale. You need to see this, he said. Judge Hale took the phone and froze. Elena's heart plummeted. What is it? He turned the screen toward her. A photo. A young woman with the same eyes as Elena, standing alone under the arches of the Brooklyn Bridge, looking terrified. Captioned with one message. I'm your sister. And Keaton is coming for me first. The image on the officer's phone felt like a punch to the chest. The girl, young, maybe 21, stood beneath the Brooklyn Bridge's stone archway, wind whipping her dark hair across her frightened face. Her eyes, wide and fearful, mirrored Elena's so perfectly that her knees went weak. That's her, Elena whispered. My sister. Judge Hale pressed a fist to his mouth, his eyes flooding with grief. For decades he'd believed he lost one daughter. Now he was faced with the possibility he'd lost two. Grant steadied Elena gently, guiding her into a nearby chair before she collapsed. Noah stirred in her arms but quickly settled again as she hugged him close. The detective zoomed in on the image. There's a timestamp. This photo was taken 15 minutes ago. 15 minutes? Grant repeated sharply. Then she's still close. The detective nodded grimly. She's trying to warn you, but she's being hunted too. Elena swallowed hard, voice trembling. We need to find her. Now. Judge Hale turned to the officer. Trace where this came from. We're trying, the officer said, fingers flying over the screen. But the sender is bouncing the signal through multiple routers. They're clearly hiding from Keaton, but also from us. Damien shifted in his cuffs. You don't know Keaton like we do. If that girl reached out, she's running out of options, running out of time. Grant stepped closer to Elena. You're not going to meet Keaton alone. We're going to find your sister first, then we'll deal with Keaton. Elena shook her head, tears filling her eyes. What if she hurts her while we're searching? What if we're already too late? Judge Hale crouched in front of her, gently gripping her arms. Look at me, Elena. She lifted her tear-filled gaze. You survived 26 years of lies. You survived a marriage built on manipulation. You survived being used without your consent. You are not losing your sister today. Not again. Elena's breath cracked, but she nodded. The detective's radio buzzed. We've got movement, an officer reported. A woman matching the sister's description was seen running toward the riverside path alone. Grant stiffened. Running from what? The radio crackled again, and this time the voice on the other end sounded frantic. She's being chased. We spotted a second figure behind her, hooded, moving fast. We think it's Keaton. Elena jumped to her feet. We have to go. Judge Hale turned to the detective. Deploy every available officer. No guns drawn unless absolutely necessary. Keaton is desperate. Grant grabbed his coat. I'm with Elena, Damien yelled after them. You're all fools. Keaton always works with someone. She never moves alone. Nobody looked back. They sprinted out of the precinct and into the icy Brooklyn night. Cold air blasted Elena's face as she clutched Noah to her chest, her legs already aching but her adrenaline pulling her forward. Grant ran beside her, one hand ready to steady her if she stumbled. Judge Hale and the detective team followed close behind. The Brooklyn Bridge loomed overhead, lights glittering like distant stars above the water. The riverside path stretched ahead, dark, narrow, dotted with street lamps that flickered against the wind. An officer pointed. There, movement by the railing. Elena's heart leapt. A small figure stumbled into view, clutching the rail with trembling hands. Her sister. Even from a distance, Elena knew it was her. Those eyes, that posture, that mixture of fear and determination. Please let her be safe, Elena whispered. Grant put a hand on her back. She will be. But then, another shadow stepped out behind the girl. Tall, hooded, deliberate. Keaton. Elena, the girl screamed, voice carrying across the wind. Run, it's a trap. Before she could finish, Keaton lunged toward her, grabbing her wrist brutally and yanking her backward. Elena screamed. Grant grabbed for her as she tried to rush forward. Wait, Elena. But Elena tore free. Her voice split the night. Let her go. Keaton turned and Elena froze. Because behind Keaton, stepping out of the shadows like he'd been waiting for the perfect moment, was a man Elena recognized. Someone she never expected to see again. Someone who wasn't supposed to be alive. Elena froze mid-step, her breath locking in her chest as the man stepped from the shadows. The icy river wind whipped his coat, revealing a face she had once seen only in old, faded photos tucked inside the hidden file Judge Hale had shown her. A face she thought she'd never see alive. The man stood tall, his expression torn between remorse and urgency. "Elena," he whispered, "don't trust Keaton. She's using all of us." Judge Hale stopped dead behind her, the blood draining from his face. "Michael," he rasped, "you're dead. Your body was found 20 years ago." Michael Hale, Lucas's younger brother, Elena's biological uncle, alive. Grant's hand instinctively moved to shield Elena, but she stepped forward, heart pounding. "How? Why?" You disappeared." Michael swallowed. "Because I found out what the Keatons were doing. I tried to expose them. They faked my death before I could speak. I've been hiding for 2 decades. Keaton jerked Elena's sister tighter, snarling, "He's lying. He always lied. He abandoned you both." But Michael's eyes locked on Elena's, those same Hale family eyes, and she saw the truth shimmering in them. Pain, fear, and love. "I tried to save you," he said hoarsely. "The night you were taken, I chased them. I almost died trying." Elena's throat tightened. "If you're telling the truth, help us. Help her." She nodded at the trembling girl Keaton held captive. Michael stepped forward, voice steady as iron. "Let the girl go, Audrey. This ends tonight." Keaton laughed high, sharp, unhinged. "It doesn't end until I get what I deserve. That child," she pointed at Elena's stomach, "was meant for me. Not her. Me." Judge Hale roared. "You stole my daughter. You stole 2 babies, and now you want to steal her child too?" Keaton's mask cracked. "I had no choice. My body was dying. I needed a child with perfect genetics. Hale genetics." Elena's sister sobbed. "She took me from a shelter, kept me hidden. Please help me." The detective and officers emerged from behind benches, trees, and lampposts, their quiet formation now a tight circle closing around Keaton. Grant whispered to Elena, "Stay behind me. It's almost over." But Keaton wasn't finished. She pressed a small device against the girl's side, an injector. One step closer, and she gets a full dose of sedative. "You'll never find her again." Michael raised both hands. "Audrey, look at me. Look at what you've become." She trembled, manic desperation flickering in her eyes. "I wanted a family. I wanted something perfect, something I never had." Elena stepped forward despite Grant's protest. "You don't get to ruin my life because yours was hard." Keaton's eyes snapped toward her, and in that split second, her grip loosened. Michael lunged. Grant rushed forward. Judge Hale shouted orders. Officers surged. The injector clattered onto the pavement as Keaton screamed, caught between Michael and 2 officers as the girl stumbled into Elena's arms. "It's okay," Elena whispered, holding her sister tight. "You're safe. I've got you. I'm here." The girl sobbed into her shoulder. "I knew you'd come. I knew it." Keaton was restrained, screaming curses as officers dragged her away. Damien, brought in moments later under supervision, watched silently, shattered but stunned into remorse for the chaos he once enabled. Judge Hale knelt in front of both girls, tears streaking his face. "I lost you once," he whispered, voice breaking. "I will never lose either of you again." Michael stood behind him, finally free from decades of hiding. Grant placed a hand on Elena's back, his voice soft. "It's over. You did it." Elena looked at her newborn family, father, uncle, sister, and then at Grant, whose steady presence had carried her through every impossible moment. "It's really over," she whispered, and for the first time in her life, she felt whole. So, that's how the story finally comes to an end. And if you are still here, still watching, or reading at this very moment, then something inside this journey must have touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it's pain you've known. Maybe it's strength you forgot you had. Or maybe it's simply the reminder that no one survives life alone. Elena's story teaches us something timeless. We can be broken without being defeated. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacles to our acting." Every wound becomes a doorway, every betrayal becomes a teacher, and every truth we finally face becomes a kind of healing. Life will not always be gentle. People will disappoint us. Some will take advantage of our kindness. But like Elena, we can choose courage over fear, clarity over confusion, and dignity over despair. You are stronger than whatever has tried to silence you. And now, my wonderful friends, if you felt even a whisper of meaning today, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It helps more hearts find their way here. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm grateful you stayed until the end.